thanks everyone for coming today. We are going to hear first about the Missouri Intern Connect program, and then we'll hear about the economy overview reports that were sent out at the end of last year, and kind of look over those reports and talk about data best practices. So we'll hear from Bob Schwartz and Kelly Dyer, and then we'll hear from Mallory, Rahe, and she'll be introducing our newest employee, Alan Spell, as well to help her with that. So just a few announcements, and then I think Mallory will have some additional ones as well, but a few things. There is a new resource we just posted on our website, Gross Domestic Product Trends in Missouri. So Mark White wrote this kind of extension brief, and so it's on our website if you want to look at that. Also, I will be sending out a webinar survey, so just looking forward to next year and what webinar topics we're going to do, getting feedback from you all about what has worked well, what do you want to see in the future. It should be a pretty easy, like 2-minute survey. And lastly, as you all should know, we have our meeting at the end of the month, like the Ozarks, January 28th through 30th. So I'm excited to see you all at that meeting. So I'll close this and then let me open up. Oh, you might all see my email. That's fine. I'll open up this one real quick. All right.
Hi,
okay, can you all see the internships for talent attraction? Is that what you guys are seeing?
Just let Michael know that I'll probably be.
All right.
Okay.
Can you all see? All right. Bob? Yep. If that screen is showing, I'll go ahead and let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bob Schwartz. I serve as Director of Special Projects at the SBDC Center here in Columbia. And Kelly and I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about internships for talent attraction, and also about something called the Missouri Intern Connect program. And I'm gonna try to take about 5 minutes. I'll do the first half of this, and Kelly will do the second half of this. And I promised Hannah I'd try to keep it brief today, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about this at the conference in a few weeks. So with that background, Hannah, go ahead and go to the next slide. You got the deck yesterday, and obviously there's a lot of slides here, so I'm going to go pretty briefly through about the first dozen of these and then turn it over to Kelly. But we did want to go ahead and get this into your hands for now. So as you go through the slide deck, and I'll touch on some of these preliminary slides, but we'll probably go through many of them fairly quickly this morning. But we did want you to have this as a resource for yourselves. And in this deck, what you will see are topics ranging from what is an internship, to a little bit of a focus on how they get used for talent attraction, what some of the benefits are to both employers and also students. You'll see a decent resource slide on what makes a good internship, talk a little bit about some of the rural community benefits, strategies and tactics, and then Kelly will talk about Missouri Intern Connect. So Hannah, you can go to the next slide. I think the only point I would talk about here, I'm guessing most of you know at least something about internships, and maybe some of you have deeper knowledge than others. But basically an internship is going to be a 10 to 13 week, 40-hour per week appointment. And I think it doesn't show up on this slide. I touch on it on a later slide. The main thing is these are real jobs, and if the company should really treat the student like a real employee. And if they do that, they'll get a lot out of the student will get a lot out of the internship, and really winds up being very beneficial to both the employer and the student. But the key thing is to actually treat the individual like a real employee. Next slide. There are a variety of internships ranging from traditional to project-based. Some employers actually hire students to work virtually. Typically, however, the student would be on site at the company or organization. There's also a growing area of internships called micro internships. These might occur during the semester. It could be as short as a spring break, would be more than job shadowing. You could actually give them a short-term project and see how that works out. The micro internships can also be done remotely, but that's kind of a list of the different types. A main thing is that most companies that actually use internships are not using them just to get an intern, but are also using them looking at access to new talent. And particularly, I think this can be important in rural areas where talent attraction can be a bit more difficult. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges there, but also how important some of these smaller businesses are to Missouri and how smaller companies might use internships to go ahead and get talent. Next slide. It's a spectrum of areas, just like we have real employees in all these different areas. You can get interns in each of these areas. Very common to see interns hired into manufacturing. I'm an engineer by training. I teach our co-op course for ceramic engineering down on the Raleigh campus. And through coordinating that, most of the students that do internships will wind up getting employment at the companies where they've done an internship. So in some ways, it really winds up being a talent pathway for companies to utilize. It's think of it as a very long-term interview. Okay, next slide. One of the things I did want to talk about here is some companies have been turned off to internships in the past because they don't do them at the right time frame. If you're looking to get an intern for the spring or the summer, you really need to have an offer out to a student in the fall, because that is when they are considering other offers, other opportunities that they have. There is a lot of competition to get new talent, to get new students. Unemployment is still low. Students will be considering other opportunities, but it is a opportunity. Even if a company doesn't wind up with the ability to hire an intern at that time, still gives them the opportunity to build greater brand recognition among students. And there are resources, and Kelly's going to talk about one of those resources called Missouri Intern Connect, and that's one we'd like you to know something more about as we go through today. Next slide. I've already touched on some of these in terms of the opportunity to attract new talent. Typically, younger hires come in with a lot of new ideas and energy, and maybe some technical capabilities that don't currently exist at the company. So it is an opportunity to get more talent as a part of the team. Okay, next slide. For students, it is an opportunity for a student to gain experience. It really does help them put into context what their academic studies are teaching them and what their studies are preparing them for. But I think the one bullet, if I had to pull out one bullet on this slide, it would be the one about stay local. It's an opportunity for students to, if they can find an employer and identify an employment situation, they can actually go back somewhere close to home, somewhere close to where they grew up. And it's an opportunity for companies to reattract talent that was there that potentially might leave longer term. Last but not least, next slide. And then I'm going to turn this over to Kelly. And I know I've gone a little bit long here already. Key aspects of a good internship. Planning projects, reporting lines. I've already said this, give them real work and treat them like regular employees. I would also suggest that it's good for both the employer and the student to do mid-appointment and end-of-appointment performance evaluations. Next slide. In Missouri, how do internships potentially benefit rural Missouri? There are about 183,000 employers in Missouri. Most of these businesses are smaller than 250, but they actually still employ 74% of Missouri's workforce. So we think the Intern Connect tool is particularly useful for businesses that maybe don't have a robust HR function, that are maybe between 10 and 250 employees, and that really can't afford to go out to a career fair. Okay, this is my last slide. You can move on to strategies and tactics. We know that the CESs can recognize what local companies are looking for in terms of talent. And hopefully by sharing this expertise and recognize that you can get back to either Kelly or I, we're prepared to assist you in working with any local companies that might want to do internships. Okay, Kelly, all yours. Sorry, I went a little bit long.
No, you're good. You're good. I've been out to a couple of regional extension meetings, so a couple of you have probably heard about this, but we weren't able to get to all regions, so I appreciate your time today. This is the website. Go ahead, Hannah. We launched it a year ago. It's a statewide intern matching portal. There are so many options out there for people to find internships that it's confusing to companies and students. So we're trying to centralize the internships These internships can be any type. They, you know, that Bob listed earlier, they could be the micro. The colleges are mainly interested in getting 4-credit internships, but we're interested in just getting students trained in real jobs. Go ahead. We copied it off the Indiana model. They have been doing their intern portal since 2001. So we've got a long ways to catch up. They are great mentors. So anytime I have any issues, I ask them. They help pay for internships through their model. So that's our long-term goal. But if you want to compare, you can go to the Indiana site. Next. This is what our site looks like, the landing page. You can go ahead and Hannah. MU Extension has money in this project. That's why we're talking to you. I'm with the Missouri Chamber Foundation and the Small Business Development Center, but we're partnering with MU Extension Business Development and then Higher Ed, and we've got a few other grants. But just know that MU Extension is a big partner and plays a big role in this. Next. There's no charge for anybody, the students, employers, nobody has to pay anything. We're funding this through donations and grants and financing through the chamber. Next. There's lots of resources on the website. So if you run into a company that wants to set up an internship, there's a guidebook that can be downloaded in PDF version. It's step-by-step how to set up an internship, what to think about. There's all kinds of forms on the website and in the guidebook on assessing if the company's ready for an internship. A lot of the other things I'm not going to go into detail about, but there's lots of resources for you to help businesses if there's internship opportunities out there. Next slide, Hannah. It makes the resource is very easy. Once the company puts their internship on there, they can copy it for the next year and just change the dates. All the internships that are posted on this site automatically go out to LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter so the students can find them. And they can link to their company application site. They don't have to go through Intern Connect to do the application process. We make it as easy as possible. There's all kinds of regional resources on there. So if you go to your region and find that there's resources missing, please send them to me because it's also an attraction piece for interns. We want to get them to your corners of the world. Next, Hannah. And thank you. Oh, I forgot to say on the regional map, Bob and I have made it our goal to try to get an internship listed at least for each region. And then maybe a year from now, we'd love to have an internship in maybe every county in the state on the Missouri Intern Connect. So we'd love you to help us get that accomplished. And one last thing, I'm sitting with Stephen in his office because we just had a meeting. We're setting up a pilot in Johnson County, Missouri. We're doing a survey of the county businesses to see if we can get more internships set up here, see what interest there is, maybe do educational workshops. So we are open to all kinds of ideas. This is a new thing for me, and I'm learning along the way also. So I appreciate your time. Any questions? The last slide has our contact information. So reach out to myself or Bob, and we'll be at the conference later this month also. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, thanks so much. Alrighty. Oh, quick. There was one question, I think, from Elizabeth Smith. Can you please tell me more about the regions and how they were formed? Do they align with other organizations or?
The regions were what used to be the DED regions.
Okay.
The extension had just changed theirs. And then as soon as we used the DED regions, they changed theirs too.
Okay.
So.
Yep.
So we just left them.
Fair.
Great question though.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay, Can you
Wonderful.
see our slides?
I can see it, Mallory.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kelly and Bob. And now I'd like to briefly introduce our newest team member here at Exceed, Alan Spell, a new assistant extension professor. Alan, you want to say a few things?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm really glad to be a part of this team now. And I've been excited about some of the work that Extension has done through the years. And of course, coming from Merrick and seeing, how we can collaborate and of course, collaborate with the state, with the chamber, and do exciting things to help our businesses and communities. I'm just really eager to be here and glad to be a part of this. So happy to share information and to, help obviously you at the county levels understand some of the economic and industry data and workforce data that help your community thrive.
Yeah, and Alan will be providing additional contract and grant funded capacity here for us on campus and Exceed. We've already got him working on a funded study. He's already submitted another funded study, and you've been here since January 2nd, a week,
My sixth
right?
day, yeah, this is a week.
Day 6. Well, welcome to Alan,
Thank
and you'll be at the January meetings later this month.
Yes, I will be there. So I look forward to meeting a lot of you.
Very good. So I wanted to talk about a couple of other things that we have going on. Mark, I noticed you're on the webinar. If you want to make a quick plug for the big study, the Workforce Needs Assessment Study, you can, or I can.
Yeah, no, we are, one of the things that we're working on is a workforce needs assessment for Missouri's food, ag, and forestry sector. As part of this work, we are doing an employer survey. So if you in your particular county have employers that are involved in food manufacturing or just agricultural production or forestry or wood products, we can send you some information and it would be great if you could encourage them to take our survey. The other thing that we're doing to get input from employers in food, ag, and forestry around the state is a series of focus groups. And we have 8 around the state. We will be in Kansas City at the end of this month, Kansas City and Macon at the end of this month. And I think Jennifer Presbury is going to be reaching out to you shortly if you are a county engagement specialist in one of those areas to help promote our focus groups and get employers in your regions to attend. And then we have other focus groups that will be held in, let's see, looking at a map, St. Louis, Sikeston, Jefferson City, Sedalia, St. Joseph's, and Springfield. And that'll run through, I think, early March. And so we will be reaching out to you asking for some promotional help in terms of getting folks to attend our focus groups. The overarching point of the focus groups is to get a sense of, for employers in food, ag, and forestry, what their current workforce challenges are, what future workforce challenges are, and maybe some, get them to offer some ideas for ways to address some of those challenges. The study itself will be done, we're doing this in partnership with the Missouri Department of Ag. Study should be done by the end of May or early June, and really the goal of this study is to inform what will be a statewide workforce development strategy for food, ag, and forestry around the state. So any help that we can get from you all on that would be great. So if you have any questions, like I said, I think Jennifer Presbury is going to be reaching out to some of you all for some help on promoting things. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask Jennifer or myself.
Great, thanks, Mark. And you will see these focus group events start appearing on your county extension pages under the events tab. CVent has set all of these up. So when you see that, you know where it's coming from and why. The other thing I wanted to say briefly is that here at Exceed, we're working on creating a series of videos that talk about our major areas of research and projects, The first one is already up, but it's not on our website yet, which I realized this morning when I went to go link to it. It's only on our Facebook page, but we'll be redesigning our Exceed website to help better convey to the public and to be a better resource for you what we do well on campus. And as part of that messaging, we're developing these short videos, less than 3 minutes, to talk about these major areas of focus for us. The first one is on agritourism, and a second one will be coming shortly on rural manufacturing, both of these focusing on Sarah's expertise. Okay, so now that it's 9:21, let's get to the heart of things. We have updated the EMSI profiles. In the email that Hannah sent out earlier this week, we encouraged you to go take a look at those. You had access to them last year for the first time. Now we've updated them. And you may ask yourself, why do I need to look at these? Well, for 3 reasons. We hope that it gives you a way to understand your community broadly and quickly. There's a little bit of information in there that will allow you to benchmark to your state or your extension region. And if you want to see the full report for either all of Missouri or your extension region, that is also available to you in Box. And then finally, this idea of better understanding your place is important, we think, for your job fundamentally and for your Connect strategy work. And in fact, building a data profile is the first part of the Connect strategy. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So again, it's in Box. These are long pages. These are long reports. I picked the first one in the list, Adair County, 29 pages. Some of them are slightly shorter or longer, depending on how many industries or occupations you have. And what I have done in this presentation is taken screenshots of every single page of that Adair County report. And today, we don't have time to walk deeply through this, but I will share these slides. They'll be in Box. I hope this is a resource to you that when you look at your report, if you didn't have a chance to do so before today, you can pull these up and have a few more questions answered. And because it's so much data, and because a lot of you may not have a lot of exposure to this information, I have starred pages with that yellow star with the black outline that I think provide a good starting place. So first of all, it's always good to understand what data are we looking at, where does this data come from? EMSI pulls a lot of data from different sources. It's proprietary. The university pays for the privilege of accessing this data set because EMSI puts a ton of work into this. They use lots of different data sources, and it's a fairly comprehensive, maybe the most comprehensive estimate of jobs and occupations.
Right. I think it is it's a great source to try to combine different parts of government data collection into one easy resource. And so it does have different types of information, such as employment by payroll employees and even estimating self-employed from other reports. So I think it is a good, well-rounded product.
What we've given you today just talks about employment as a whole. What we hope to do in 2020 is to start providing you more detailed reports on certain segments of the data. Now that we have more capacity here in Exceed, and as we hope to build more capacity among all of our faculty to understand their place. And this will tie into some of the data training work that I'll be launching in July. So the first page with data on it, this is good. This is a good place to spend some time. It compiles a lot of information on one page. This is the only page of this particular report that offers that benchmarking to your extension region and the state. When it says region down here, that means the county that you have open. So this is a good place to look at. Now, I want to remind you all that this is, the computer generates these reports, right? So you have to be careful. And, you know, for example, throughout this report, I have added little comments and suggestions of things that I would do, or the way I would use this report if I were you. And I tend not to report really small changes, like changing from 47.9% to 48%. This is not a change that is worth reporting to the public. Okay, so I'm going to skip over a lot of these slides, but I hope that you will ask questions during this. In the chat box, we have it pulled up, and then again, come back to it later, email me with questions. The next section looks at historic trends and projected trends. And we're going to talk just a minute on what a projected trend line is and how you should use this kind of information. So sometimes people really want to say something about the future, but anytime we do that, it's highly subjective. And the further you try to talk about the future, the more likely you are to be wrong. These EMSI reports provide what they call straight line projections. So they use the rate of change over the past 3 data points, and they project that 5 years forward. So what happens when we look at population? Well, we see that as this county, 2014 is after the Great Recession, but many counties continued to fall into decline, and they didn't rebound as quickly as the US. So population continues to fall until 2016. Here we see the county hitting rock bottom in terms of population. What's happened since? Well, they started to rebound, but the growth rate in 2019, the county had basically the same number of people as it had in 2017. So for the next 5 years, EMSI is projecting that the county population will not change.
And one thing to note also is that the graph itself is coming right out of EMSI's report, and it doesn't always show you a kind of the focus of change. I mean, we're looking at 25,500 down to 22,200. So you're talking about a change of 300 people in a large county. So just keeping in mind, sometimes these changes are very minor in the big scheme of things, but the graph looks really dramatic, but it's really not that dramatic of change. You look from 2017 to 2019, and it's really a change of less than 50 jobs up or 50 people up and down. So just be aware of that.
Mallory, I had a question real quick.
Yes.
Would it be better in some cases if you're presenting on this information just kind of in a general setting, right? Like informational talk, to just go ahead and can we enter in some of these numbers in with kind of some more historic data to kind of, as what was just said, to give some context of what the change in the last couple of years really looks like compared to the last 50 or so. I mean, as long as, of course, we're entering it in alongside data that's comparable, that's indicating the same thing from before. It seems like it gives a better context to push out a couple decades back to give people a sense of the trend.
Well, some people care about long-term trends and some people don't. I think a lot of people want to know what's happening right now, what has recently happened. It's a lot of work to go back and collect like long trends, but we actually have that data available. So if you want that, you just have to ask for it. Part of our push to give you more data this year is actually making more of these kinds of numbers available to you. But I think the point is, when you look at these things, we encourage you to focus on the actual data and not the projected data. Just because EMSI gives it to you doesn't mean we think it's information that should be taken out into the public. And again, this is, because it's computer generated, you know, these graphs, like these, they look overly dramatic. The way you represent data is really important. What we want you to see here briefly is just, okay, what's happening to population in the last 5 years. And in this case, yes, it went down, it's come back up a little bit. There's not been a lot of change, but honestly, this time period is not really robust enough to say a lot. They'll give you the same information for total jobs. Again, I would use this just to quickly see what has happened in the last 5 years to the total number of jobs in the county. Without the US here, without Missouri here, this is very limited usefulness. This is just a starting place, right? But it's good for you to know, is employment stable, increasing slightly, decreasing slightly, or are we really in an area that's rapidly changing? Unemployment trends, you see they don't offer any projections here because this can change a lot. And in fact, it changes so often, a far better source is to actually just go to Merrick, and they have a very nice interface, and you can track this data. They update it monthly. And
yes, and just so if you haven't gone to the Merrick site in the last 6 or so weeks, we have redeveloped the site, so it's a lot easier to download data. So just for example, this morning, in looking at the Dyer County unemployment, it's really easy to grab years of data on unemployment, labor force, and download that in Excel in a really easy format, so that if you are going to chart something, you can use that. But this is, again, this is good, and it's actually, you know, a nice at a glance to kind of see the trends. But I agree. I think with our unemployment information being more updated from the resources at Merrick and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's probably a good thing to just go out there and peek at that and grab the data if you need to.
And then this is a great example of like, just wow. Don't use this. It looks really dramatic, and labor force participation rates are complicated to describe. But it's, you know, it's what UMSI does, and it's a nice at your fingertips resource. Population characteristics, again, this is a quick dashboard overview. I do not recommend using a lot of this in small places with small populations. And really ask yourself, when is it reasonable to assume that my place is or should be like the national average? You know, the national average, it is a real thing, you can calculate it, but it's not always meaningful for all comparisons. And remember, when you're tracking small events like crime rates among a small population, very few changes can look really exaggerated. So I do not recommend that you report crime rates ever in small populations.
Right, and I mean, just to back up in the larger scale, in general, crime rates and property crime rates, for example, are generally higher in less urban areas than versus the violent crime, which is generally higher in more urban areas. So these are generalities about our whole United States. I take this is just going to give you a general sense of where this particular county is compared to this piece of information. But like a lot of this, I feel like it's background information for you to kind of know some of the context of your community. Not all of this is going to be something you're going to want to go out to a presentation and say, hey, here's exactly what's happening in your community. It's really a lot of times around just familiarizing yourself with how does that community compare nationally. That can be very different from an urban/rural difference if your community is totally rural or totally urban.
Mm-hmm.
Mallory, am I supposed to just?
Oh, you can. I have another question too. You can go first, Chris, and there's a question in the chat box, so go first.
Oh, I think now that I'm looking at that, mine's the same. So I'll let Misty just.
Oh, so I see. Misty asks, how small is small? Well, that kind of depends on what you're talking about, but really, like counties with less than 10,000 people is small, and a lot of our counties have far less than that. small population versus a mixed population. If a county, oh, okay. Well, if you have an urban area in your county, Misty, and the larger you get, and certainly like as you're approaching 50,000 and above, you know, then you have a more you have a large enough population that it's easier to get better data for, and the data for small events is going to be more stable over time, and therefore reporting on a single year is more likely to be accurate to what is happening in that place. But I do want to reinforce that we're not asking you, and I don't encourage you to take this profile and try to present it to the Chamber of Commerce or anyone else in your community. Not yet, right? Like, this is a piece of a background, a beginning place to understand your region. And we hope that each of you will look at the ones for all the region, all the counties within your the area that you serve.
Yeah, and I just, to add to that, that regional profile that is also produced in that folder will give you
For their extension
right,
region?
for their extension region, will give you a backup of a higher level to look at some of those numbers. And just a quick, talk about regions. Kelly had, there was a question around what the regions are that the internship is using, and what DED is using, and what Merrick has. And there is a 10 region Merrick model that's out there. The actual one that, and that's what the internship portal is developed on, but DED's one is actually an aggregation of those 10. So there's 6, but they're aggregated from those 10. So there is at least a consistency in those patterns. Your extension regions are going to be different than what's on these other resources, but on the Merrick site, there is also a regional report that is done every year, and you can use that as well to kind of collect some additional data. It may not match your lines exactly, but I think between this report here, your regional EMSI reports, and the stuff on Merrick, it's going to give you just a good general foundation for understanding the area that you're working in.
Mallory, there's one more question as well from
Are
Sarah.
you able to select multiple counties as a region? Sarah, in the EMSI software, yes. What we have provided to you, no, because these are just static reports that Hannah downloaded. It was kind of labor intensive. If you
Mallory, I think your video froze.
But you have your extension region already. Okay, so the next section is on the industry characteristics. This is a fairly large section here. I've just kind of summarized what we're going to find in this section, and I'm going to move a little quickly. This looks at which industries have the most jobs. Good just to know. This is which industries are growing, which all of these I think should be used in context, with each other. This looks at specialization, comparing the share of jobs in each industry in the county as a share of total employment, and putting that over the share at the US. And as you are over 1, this is the 1 line, and the further you are over 1, the more specialized, or the more jobs you have as a share of your total employment compared to the US average. But remember, specialization is not the same as large employers. It's just looking at the share. So again, this is why you put all of these things into context with one another. It's also important to think about your industries not as who they employ and how many people they employ, but which industries are producing the most, the highest value of goods and services, making the highest contribution to gross regional product. As Hannah said earlier, and I put a link in here, Mark just released a great summary on gross domestic product, the exact same measure, but instead of gross regional product, they call it gross domestic product at the state level and for counties as well. That is going to give you a lot of resource information. I encourage you to read that if you ever want to talk about gross regional product, gross domestic product, or definitely before you ever try to talk to anybody else about it. We have resources for you. Another thing to think about, not just what kind of industry provides the most jobs, what kind of industry do we have far more jobs in as a share of total employment, but which industries offer higher wages or lower wages. And again, combining this with which industries are growing or declining really starts to give you a sense of your current economy and how it's changing. And this page pulls it all together. So I recommend that you print this page of the report. And, you know, I have a filing cabinet right next to my desk that I like to paste up all kinds of things that I reference frequently. I think that this might be something that you would want to reference often enough to have it at your fingertips, just so you understand, what does my economy look like? And remember, if you need to review descriptions of these acronyms, the LQ, location quotient, or GRP, you can come back here, you can ask us. Then the report offers a little bit of information on business characteristics. So I think this is worth looking at so that you know who the largest employers are in your county, and so that you know which companies are looking for the most workers or provided the most job postings in the previous 12 months. These may be companies that you try to talk to as part of your Connect strategy. They may become partners for some workforce development projects, but don't talk to major employers until you feel really prepared and you understand them and you understand their needs, or you understand where there might be an opportunity to partner with them.
One thing, if you could back up, just a helpful tidbit here on the profiles and the job, which is the equivalent of job postings. Don't equate job postings with actual job openings for two reasons. One, let's take you know, something like the Northeast Regional Medical Center. They may have 73 postings, but they may be looking to hire in one posting 5 nurses, for example. So it could be that they're using one posting to hire a lot of individuals, or they could be reposting jobs. So it's really, use it for a sense of magnitude. You can see Truman State really has a lot of job postings versus say down at the bottom of Walmart, for example. So that's one thing to be aware of. And the second thing to be aware of is that, you know, not everybody posts jobs. We know through analysis of past real-time job analysis that sometimes informal networks, a lot of times in the construction industry and so forth, may not show up in some of these job postings. So this isn't everything, is the story I want to leave with you. It's not everything, but it does give you a sense of some of the big employers and how they're posting.
And then this looks at the composition of businesses in your county by their overall size. And when you hear SBDC folks talking about wanting to target stage 2 companies, well, here you can see quickly how many do we have in that. You can aggregate up these categories. Typically, stage 2 is referred to as companies that have between 10 and 99 employees and are generating at least $1 million in revenue. We can't look at revenue from this, but you can look at just companies by the number of people they employ. Now we're going to move on to workforce characteristics. This portion of the report mimics the industry characteristics. You'll see the same set of bar graphs, the same summary table, but instead of looking at your economy as industries, you're looking at your economy as occupations. John Gulick asks, is this listing of job postings, all of this is for your county, John. This entire report, even though it says region, it's your county, unless you're using the report for your extension region, and then it's going to be that extension region. And then you ask a question, in my case, without looking at commuter patterns, I'm not sure how accurate the listings are. Well, John, that's a good point. These are postings for companies that are looking to hire a job located inside your county, but it's not realistic to think that only your population that lives in your county will be applying for those jobs. Particularly the larger you are, the more likely you are to be supporting people who live in other counties. But still, you know how many jobs are located in my county. So occupations as opposed to industries is just another way to look at your economy. Here are the largest occupations. Every single job in every industry is also classified into an occupation. Here, the fastest growing occupation in Adair County is production occupations. These occupations occur across multiple industries, and the reason we use occupational codes is that regardless of where these production workers are working, in which industry, functionally, they have a similar job. They have a more similar job to each other than they have to other occupations. And each occupation, we can generalize about the set of tasks that that worker does and the types of educational and skill requirements that that worker will need. And to learn a lot more about occupational codes and the definitions, I've provided a resource here to the BLS.
And just let me also add, on the Merrick website, we do occupational projections for the 10 regions. We do them every 2 years. We're going to have this spring the next round of our 10-year and 2-year short-term projections. It's not by county, but it is by the 10 regions. And so you will have a nice Excel, and right now you can go out there and get the Excel for the ones that we've done and see at a glance what are the top in-demand jobs, which ones are going to be growing the most. I encourage you to use that. The one that the EMSI produces some good information. It doesn't I'm not taking away from that, but it also uses national averages for a lot of this stuff, whereas we take it down to the actual state level data. All states do this as a part of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the U.S. Department of Labor. So just be aware there's also a resource there on the Merrick website. And if you have problems finding it, please let me know.
Great, Alan. And I will add that to this page with some notes about projections so that when we send these slides to you later today, you'll have that embedded in there. Again, this is looking at specialization. This is earnings by occupation, and this is postings by occupation. I'm gonna kind of skip over this. I don't think it's, I don't know. You talk to the workforce team about stuff like this. And I want to jump to this summary table just to, again, encourage you to perhaps think about printing this kind of thing, keeping it handy. Once you understand what LQ means, then you can come back to this and you can put all of these things into perspective. Occupations by total size, occupations by change, occupations by earnings, and occupations by postings and specialization. Okay, looks like Hannah's answering another question about Merrick. Good. And then we're almost through the report. There's an educational pipeline page, which will be empty unless your county contains a college, university. Adair County contains multiple, and here they're giving us a sense of graduates. In-demand skills, again, I don't use this data. I'm going to skip over it unless you want to say anything.
Well,
Alan.
I just, the you're almost always going to see sales type of skills at the top of most counties and most regions, just because there's a lot of retail and a lot of sales jobs out there as a share of all jobs. And then you'll a lot of times see a lot of healthcare related ones, because healthcare is another one that's a really large employer in many parts of our state. So basic life support and nursing, selling techniques and merchandising, restaurant operations, they're going to be at the top of most. I think what's helpful is that national average bar. A lot of times that shows you, hey, how are we different than the national average? So I agree. There's generally not a whole lot in this actual report that's going to give you a lot of details, but it does kind of give you some idea of what some of those skills are, and generally related to some of those bigger jobs in those economies where they're hiring. And a lot of times, because of churn, that'll be retail. Because of healthcare being a big employer, that will be healthcare related, and so you'll see a lot of that in those top skills.
Is this based on job postings, Misty asks?
Yes, it is with this product here. And Merrick also has a real-time job postings analysis for the 10 regions, and you will see it's updated every 6 months. You'll see very similar things. They're based on job postings data, but they do correlate very well with the larger total occupational skill set. So for example, if you looked at your region's occupational employment statistics, which is on the Merrick website as well, you will see that retail jobs and healthcare jobs are going to be almost always the top jobs in an area. And that corresponds a lot of times with those job ads as well.
And so Alan, does Merrick offer county profiles?
No. And so the reason why is because we actually cook the data, if you will. Cooking maybe is the wrong word, but we actually develop the data for the Bureau of Labor Statistics around occupational employment statistics, for example, which in our case is a survey of companies over a 3-year panel, if you will. Every state does this, so I'm describing what is done in every state, but we don't go down, we don't say, oh, we're going to survey exactly this many in this county, exactly this many in this county. So for statistical relevance, we always sum things up at the regional level, because we just don't have high quality enough data at the small county level to be very sure about those numbers. And so we aggregate by region. Now what EMSI does is they say, well, let's take what we think is national averages and let's pull it down to a county level, because people want to know county information. They do a good job, of estimating things, and they're really the only game out there doing this to this level. But you just have to be cautious about it, knowing that the data is not really cooked at that level by people at Merrick. When you get down to that level, you just got to be a little bit more careful about how you interpret that data. Always look at the larger region in context when you can, and especially if you're going out to present this information to someone, definitely look at these multiple resources, ask questions, and make sure you're not overselling maybe a point that the data really doesn't strongly support. So that's kind of what I would put there. That's why we don't do county on a lot of reasons. The other reason we don't, and I say we, now I'm here at the university, but the reason that Merrick doesn't is because, as a function of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we have to hold individual business data confidential. So at a county level, a lot of times a big employer will be confidential, the data that you have. And so a lot of times when you try to explore your county's top manufacturers, for example, you won't see data there because of those confidentiality requirements. That EMSI tries to estimate this stuff, and they do a pretty good job a lot of times. And so that's where they take that information from and then produce these estimates. So just a little bit of background. It doesn't mean that that the data is necessarily not useful, but you just got to realize that it is sometimes estimates based on good information, but maybe not exactly the whole story.
Yeah, which I wanted to reinforce that. And again, I'll reiterate, this year we hope to continue to provide more and better resources to you around data for your places. And at times, these things, there's always this trade-off, right? Everyone wants to know very detailed data about their place. And if you're in a county with 2 two urban areas or two cities or towns, oftentimes, well, how are we different from them? And it's like, oh my gosh, you guys, we can't answer everything, right? We just can't. We don't have the resources for it. So there's always this trade-off between people wanting information and then the quality of that information. So Merrick is, you know, the best resource for regional data in our state. It's their job to produce this data. And it's a shame that their regions don't align exactly to our regions. Because you all serve locations smaller than a region, we provide the EMSI profiles because they are comprehensive across multiple variables of interest. They're the best available, but they're not perfect. And because you live in these places, you should be able to use your knowledge of your place to identify when the data is probably missing the mark a bit, and recognize that they're doing the best they can. They are the best available in this nice comprehensive snapshot that's super easy to access, but it's simply not perfect. I see there's lots of questions here. Chris, higher ed satellite campuses show they should go to your region and find out. Pam, school districts are often the biggest employers in our counties. I'm curious why these skills do not show up here. I'm guessing because there's not a lot of job turnover in school districts.
There's less turnover in school districts, and so the job postings, because they are looking at what postings are out there, they're grabbing that information, right? But this is again a great reason why you also want to turn to those Merrick occupational projections, so you can actually see teachers in almost every region, if not every region, are in demand, growing maybe is the wrong word, replacement need in a lot of these areas. And replacement occupations is a really huge concept. It's actually where most of the jobs are. It's in replacement needs, and replacement means people retiring, people changing jobs. So that's a case where you can use those occupational projections and go, well, teachers are really in demand in this area, and you need to know that, and that's a really good source for that.
And then Misty, what resources report info on self-employment or gig economy work? All of those jobs are in these totals, and that is one of the things that we would like to provide you more information on during 2020. But again, you know, we have to be thoughtful about how we do this. We don't want to overwhelm you with data. We want to focus on giving you the data that's most relevant to understanding your place. And then when you have very specific data needs for different projects, that's when you need to connect with us. Speaking of connecting, let's get back to the Connect strategy recommendations in our last 2 minutes. So if you've never done a data profile before, and I know many of you are brand new and you're still like, wait, what is the Connect strategy? Go to Box, you'll find a whole folder of resources. Use the Canvas website. It walks you through those resources, and go ahead, start now. Look through your EMSI report, use this PowerPoint as a guide, and start learning about your place. What's the purpose of the data profile? It's simply a way for you to summarize a few things you've learned about your region and to have as a reference for yourself as you work in your county. If you completed one in 2019 during our pilot year of the Connect strategy, we encourage you to update that, to look at your new report, the one you just got in December of 2019 with 2019 data, and see, okay, well, let's take a look. How have things changed? I don't advise you to compare directly between the 2018 EMSI data and the 2019. This is an estimation process. Some of these things may have changed dramatically, but that may be based on the data availability that EMSI had. Some data becomes, quality improves over time, sometimes quality decreases. So I would like you to just take a fresh start. And EMSI provides you this 5-year snapshot. So instead of looking at, well, last year I reported what happened between 2013 and 2018. Let me see what's happened there from 2014 to 2019. Don't do that. So don't do that. Instead, just look at how has my economy been changing between 2014 and 2019. Okay, and it's 10 o'clock. We'll stay on for a few more minutes in case anyone has any other questions. Thank you for your time today. I know this was a really packed webinar, but I hope it was useful. You'll get the slides and feel free to ask us additional questions as they arise.
So Mallory, I had a question.
Sure, Chris.
If we just as we kind of reorganize and have this new information out and of course a different approach to some of the stuff, if we're going to do sort of short speaking engagements on some information like what we did, as you know, in the past when kind of Sharon and Pat kind of got us started on that. My idea would be mostly just to take this information, the updated data, and add it to some of the things in the past and keep it pretty basic still, avoiding the projections and other things like you said are pitfalls. But would you still like to look over those things before they go out? Is that like the protocol we want to follow?
Well,
which I'm fine with. I just didn't know how you guys wanted to do it.
Well, I feel like that's above my pay grade to answer. I'm always happy to take a look at that stuff. I feel like the whole point of the data training that I'll start in July is to actually create that capacity throughout the state, because here at Exceed we do have limited capacity and we must fund our salaries with contract and grant funded projects. So sometimes it's just a really busy time of the year, and then other times, you know, well, we just don't have the ability to do that. But we want to support you, and we're trying to create capacity in a number of ways. So I would encourage you to send things to us, and we'll do our best to look at them. And I am hoping that as the data training kicks off and we go through that, everybody who participates in that will be developing detailed presentations for their county, their region, their trio. And I am hoping that as that training concludes, then we have a whole cadre of folks that are the regional experts in this, and that you can support your colleagues, or you can create presentations for your colleagues and deliver that with them, support them as they make those deliveries. Doing this work well is hard. Alan, myself, Mark, Sarah, Rob, lots of other people, it takes years, right, Alan? And you got to learn about the data. It's hard to find the story. You often have to look and just look and look and look and really make sure you're presenting things accurately. It's not something I take lightly. We want you to, you know, be making connections in your regions. I would discourage you from trying to put together a big data presentation on your own.
The Merrick group also has regional liaisons for the 10 regions. If you're developing something and you're like, you know, for example, you're wanting to talk about unemployment. You know, if you have a case like that where you're like, boy, I really want to make sure this is the way I'm interpreting unemployment right, feel free to contact one of them as well. And you do have us here as a resource. You know, it is a learning part. It does take a while to learn some of the nuances of some of this data. And I think, you know, for example, the job postings, we had to spend a lot of time educating on job postings aren't the same as job positions, openings, things like that are just a little bit of tidbits of knowledge. Hopefully we'll be able to continue to share with you as we are trying to roll out more educational resources, because those little bit of insights helps you kind of avoid some of the major pitfalls. and you can obviously understand the bigger ideas of unemployment rates and industry growth and occupation. So you're all very well capable of understanding those things. It's just I want to, we want to help just highlight where there might be a little bit of a different read on that might be less apparent to you. Those things will hopefully convey over the coming months, but also again the Merrick regional liaisons are there as well. So we hopefully, as a whole team can help you be squared away.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to encourage you to reach out. This is the start of the conversation, not the end, but I did want to get it started here early in January. I'll see you all at the lake in a couple of weeks. That would be a great time to talk because we're all just sequestered away for 3 days. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.